my fellow co-director, Alex Wilson. It's fantastic to be partnering this evening with Denise, Steve and Tal to bring this cross-chapter collaboration with Luxembourg, Gibraltar and Israel. It's a really fantastic opportunity and we're really grateful to our fantastic 4 speakers that we've got this evening. In terms of the format, we're going to be going into the panel in about 10 minutes time, and then our moderator David will be managing that. We will then, after the panel, be moving into a virtual networking session where we'll have 2 separate rooms, so please join us for that. That will be for about 15 minutes, and we will be splitting those into mentoring and funding and the LIFT experience. So Tal, I think I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you, Katie. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Awesome. So, of course, with COVID-19, it's been kind of hard for everyone. I'm not even talking about individual efforts when you're moving from quarantine to a lockdown and everything else. But thankfully, Startup Grind is planned well for such a crisis. And of course, with the SG virtual events that took over the what we call in Israel the on-live, not offline, the on-live event. We can now collaborate and then truly harness the global power of the community and do this cross-chapter event, collaborating 4 European chapters, and it's really awesome. And I sure hope Denise and everybody that will do it again quite soon. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it to you, Denise, right?
So yeah, just echoing my colleagues here, thanks very much for everybody who's registered for this event, to all of our panelists who have joined with their super interesting backgrounds and experiences during this difficult time. I want to give a massive shout out to our sponsors, Gibraltar Finance, Abacus Gibraltar, and of course Continent 8. David Black is going to be moderating tonight, but I hope you enjoy the session. And we will be seeing you after for a Q&A. Thank you very much. Over to David.
Oh, can everybody hear me okay? Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. So thank you for to the chapters, the Startup Grind chapters, for organizing this evening. It's a great thrill for Continent 8 to be involved in Startup Grind events such as this, and there's really some fantastic speakers tonight, so I hope everybody will enjoy this. Please keep the questions coming in the chat function throughout, and we'll try to come to a Q&A at the end. So once again, Continent 8 delighted to be involved, and thanks to the chapters and thanks to our speakers. So I'll move on, and hopefully our speakers will come on camera as if by magic in a second. But I'll ask the first question I have, I guess to Rachel on the Isle of Man, is what advice would you give a business owner faced with a decision to pivot or to stay on course?
I think I'd have to say that you have to do a good risk assessment of what the pivot is. Obviously, you've got your business plan already for what you want to do, but I think if you're going to pivot, you've got to make sure that the pivot isn't going to put you in a worse position than you would have been sticking it out on the typical route. So I think it takes quite a detailed risk assessment of what each of those things are going to achieve, and whether you can continue to do one whilst doing the other, or whether a switch really is desperately needed. So I think that would be certainly my biggest piece of advice.
Okay, very good, very good. And Ryan, if I could come to you and ask, you know, we all know that some of the best business ideas are born out of adversity. But in your experience, Ryan, you know, what are the challenges in terms of facilities and funding? Are they as easy to come by in times like we're in today?
Well, I'm still looking to invest. So I suppose it depends who it is. I mean, it's very difficult right now to get a return on capital. So if you're going into the markets, you know, the equities are much more expensive than they were. You can't get anything at the bank. Your bonds aren't doing anything. So for people that have got money, it's they've got to put it somewhere. So in that respect, I would say I don't see why not.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And Max, hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. In terms of the typical COVID-related business cycle, it's accelerated in the sense of what might happen in today's environment. So have you any advice to everybody listening in terms of how do startups rally resources to meet demands and gain an advantage over your bigger companies who...
Unique opportunity, what we're seeing right now, more than just a challenge. When you have those unique opportunities, you just need to be open-minded to harness those opportunities as best as you can. That's pretty much what we are doing. But not forgetting all of the lean structures that you have built or trying to build till now. So it's not that we need to go crazy around, but we need to harness the opportunity as we can. Yeah,
no, makes sense. And Caroline, just finally as an introductory question, I guess, with the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all in, I guess, what's the biggest obstacle or challenge in learning, I suppose, not just in this time, but in general from your experience? Could you share some of your experience with us to see if what your thoughts are on that?
Hi, everyone here. My major challenge was really to live 100% virtually. As a founder of a startup, for me, the informal knowledge, what I get from people around me, being at the incubator, having a coffee with them, going for dinner, having a drink, I find these type of ideas and the informal knowledge shared in those setups inspire me a lot. So while I was able to do my work while I was in confinement, it was still hard for me mentally and even physically to be living 100% virtually. So I think I did miss this. The most challenging for me is to keep going and start finding ways of inspiration from the missed informal knowledge I was getting from interacting with people, be it in a social setup or a professional setup.
Yeah, I'm sure we can all agree with that, Caroline, that's for sure. And turning back to Rachel, a couple of questions, Rachel, on your side, which is, what a great story to convert a pet genetics laboratory into a COVID test facility. And I'm really interested, I suppose, as everybody is, what point did you make the decision to pivot in terms of that decision and do what you have done so successfully on the island?
I think it's a bit of a strange one because we didn't really pivot. It was more that we ended up with a second stream in parallel, effectively. So, the genetics lab that I run here doesn't have the right containment facilities to work with COVID-19. So I actually approached our local hospital, and I had done a couple of shifts there previously, so they knew who I was and they had an idea of my previous CV. And I basically said to them, look, if there's any way that my lab can help your lab, or we can help you get a more rapid test together, please just let us know. Because we knew that on island they were sending the tests to the UK and it was taking 3 days to get the results back, and on a small island where potentially infection could spread very quickly, we knew that we needed to get results back quicker than that. So luckily that aligned with what the hospital and the government were wanting to do anyway, which was to get on island testing. So I was just in a bit of a lucky position. So back in March, about a week and a half before our first case here on the island, that's when I approached the government. But they were aware of me previously because I'd worked in the civil service in the UK for about 15 years, basically designing DNA tests and deploying them for pathogens. So I kind of had the right skill set as well to help out. So
no, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And it's interesting you say that because, the relationship between the private sector and government, was there I don't want to say a conflict, but was there a thought in your mind, well, what are my primary interests here versus volunteering, or did that go through your mind, or was that something that you just thought, I can do this, so I'll do it?
I think it was a bit of the latter. So I have quite an altruistic side in that, I spent so many years in the civil service in the UK government basically doing this kind of thing. And I thought, well, I know there probably isn't anybody else in the Isle of Man that could help that. And England and the UK were very unlikely to prioritise the Isle of Man for anything. So it was a little bit of a case of, okay, well, I could help out, but what's that going to do to my business? Can I afford to take that time away from the business? And I also didn't want to tread on any toes in case the government all had it in hand and they had somebody up there at the local hospital.
Yeah, indeed.
So it was maybe over a week or so, a little bit of kind of a little dance between me and the local government about how that might help, what I might be able to do, whether they had the right equipment, whether I had the right equipment. And over the space of a week, really, we came to an agreement that we could collaborate on that. And I think we've really described it more as quite a successful public-private partnership, which is quite new to the Isle of Man, really. So
that's really good, Rachel. And meanwhile, with doing all of that, you've kept your original business running, and that has to be challenging. But do you see these running alongside each other going forward? And how do you think the future, what lessons have you learned in terms of what, the good, the bad and the ugly, I guess, about all that has happened in the last several months?
I think it could be both the good and the ugly, in the fact that I now know exactly how many hours a week I can work without keeling over. I thought I was pretty good beforehand, having run a startup and gotten us to this point. I thought, 70, 80-hour weeks, that's my limit. No, it turns out 100, 110 is now where I know that point is. But it's strange because when I first approached the government and said, I might be able to help you here, the pet genetics side of things had just kind of plateaued for a week as lockdown came in the UK. So the vast majority of my customers are in the UK. And I thought, great, if that just ticks over, I go and help the government here, and then I don't have to manage the two that badly. But what I did find that probably from the second week of the UK lockdown, everybody decided that because they were working from home and they were stuck at home with their family and their kids, they also wanted a dog. So our primary business is testing dogs for inherited diseases, and that everybody wanting a dog in lockdown has then put pressure on the breeders, which has put pressure on us to deliver testing for those dogs. So alongside doing all of this for the hospital, our sales tripled in pet genetics. So I've just so much like probably the worst of it is constantly prioritizing whether I need to spend more time with COVID that week or more time with the business that week, and trying to manage staff that are still working in the office while I'm trying to half work at the hospital as well. So it's been challenging.
Yeah, and well done you. That's fantastic. And the thing is about that, managing time and so on, it's something I guess we all struggle with. But if we take the startup mentality of idea, action, repeat, clearly, you've shown that ability to leverage your skills into different areas. So what's next for you then, Rachel? Is there another idea brewing there that can be a great success story as well?
I think certainly with taxigenomics, we don't just do pet genetics, so we also do kind of bioinformatics and genomics consultancy. And I think because molecular diagnostics as a whole is now having a bit of an advent, everybody knows about testing, everybody wants to know about testing. And I think that has really brought it into the limelight. And I think there's opportunities for us there in the molecular diagnostics sphere to sell assays. For example, the assay that I developed to work up at the local hospital here, we actually own the IP for that. So, there might be opportunities for us going forward and licensing that to other healthcare providers or other laboratories. So alongside all of the other things that we were going to do with the business this year that we haven't been able to do. It's still going to be busy going forward, I think.
No, that's brilliant. That's excellent. Thanks, Rachel. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions a bit later on. So if I could turn to Ryan now, which Ryan, you began your entrepreneurial. Hi, Ryan. So you began your entrepreneurial journey at 17, and fantastic success story. You now employ around 1,000 people. So, you know, how can you give us some tips, some highlights on your career, Ryan, as to how you went from A to B?
Yeah, well, what I've done is I tried to think of all the businesses that I've started, but I couldn't remember them all. So I've got a little bit of I suppose, a highlight that I put down. But at the core of this story, it's about perseverance. That's really what it's about, because I've had lots of ups and lots of downs and failed many times. So I started my career in double glazing, knocking on doors, and that's, you know, for those of you that are old enough, in fact, I don't think you are. In the old days, you used to knock on doors, and people would come in, and then you'd sell them double glazing on the night. And it was called open and close, and it was a really tough school. And it was all commission only. So that was my starting point. But what I did is those early days, I took every book that I could get my hands on, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, and so on. These people you may or may not have heard of, but I learned back to front, upside down, inside out, how to sell, and became pretty good at it. And then at the age of 19, I moved to an alarm company and became the Southern sales director there. I opened a branch for them when they said I was too young. And I think I had about 100 people working on me before I decided that, you know what, I can do this for myself. And that first journey was really interesting, because I had to get a finance company to back the fact that I was selling these alarms, and consumers needed to pay on finance. And it was following the model that I had before, which was open and close, selling on the night. So once more tough and building up sales teams. I also started a satellite TV company before Sky. I started a hotel broking company online at, I suppose, similar time, maybe even before hotels.com, probably a similar time. And, you know, I got that up. Actually, every business that I've got going, I've done really well to a point. But there are two things that I've failed with. One was understanding money. I really didn't understand money. I thought I did. You know, I thought if I've got cash in the bank, I've got money. But, you know, the profit and loss and cash, it was very, very different anyway. So there was that. And then I didn't have a connectivity as you have now with hotel broking. So I managed to lose that business. And by that time, that was a real précis of like a number of years. I was about 37, 38. And I remember a time where I was sitting there and I got literally 10 euros in my pocket. I'd moved to Spain at that point. I got my daughter in private school and literally had no money. I couldn't put petrol in the car. That was it. But what I had got is I got this technology from the hotel broking business, and I managed to convince some guy to put £20,000 into, or euro at that time actually, into another hotel broking business. But at the same time, I'd also started StaySure, and StaySure is, you know, the one that's really gone on to something quite successful now. But anyway, I got this hotel broking business, and I got it up to about 15 or 20 million pounds of the turnover. It was profitable. But at the time, the euro and the pound, the euro started to devalue against the pound. So I had a profitable business, doing well. But one of the things that I got with this business, and I try to do with all my businesses actually, it's a theme that runs through, which perhaps I'll talk to you about a little bit later, is having a cash flow positive business. And the beauty about this hotel broking business is that I was paid before I had to pay out. So I had thousands of people on holidays around the world. And at that point, the euro had moved to, I think it was it gone from 1 to 148, 1 to 148 to 1 to 128, and I had a 20% margin. So I'd basically lost all the profit in the deal before I had to pay somebody. So, you know, in a really clever move, I decided that I would hold on to the cash and wait for the euro to come back, and it went 1 to 1, literally. So I had to close that business. I managed to get customers back, which was a good thing. But it was it was tough, but actually it was the best thing that ever happened, because I'd started StaySure. I'd sort of got it going. I'd literally done it from my bedroom. I'd managed to get some underwriting before you need to be regulated with the FCA, and I was literally selling in the bedroom on my own. And then I just started, and that business, has gone on to be pretty successful. But I think the key thing that I sort of recall on my journey with StaySure, at one point I was nominated to be Entrepreneur of the Year with Ernst & Young, and I went to this place and I've met all of these entrepreneurs, and I really didn't think that these guys had my ability, which sounds quite arrogant, but it's how I felt. But what I noticed is the one thing they had got is their ability to stay focused on the same thing. And it was at that point that I really realized, if you stay focused on something and you're going in the right direction, you'll ultimately get there. You've got to be going in the right direction. If you're not, you're in serious trouble. Yeah. That was the the real thing where I decided stay focused, because like many entrepreneurs, I have an idea a minute. Caroline, I think she's on here somewhere, will tell you. She works with me now and has done for many years, and she tries very hard to stop me doing some things. But I now I'm fortunate enough to be able to do more than just one thing. But staying focused on that business is what made the difference. Yeah. The story of that is we started in travel insurance. Or rather, I noticed that in the mature market, it sounds obvious when you think about it, but the premiums were higher because mature consumers have medical conditions and so on, and they're more likely to claim. And so I focused in that area. But what I soon recognised with the underwriting that I got is that nobody really understood this area. So I rebranded the business, and over time went from over 50s into medical and so on, and went from pretty much nowhere to being the market leader. And I think the big change that happened there, that was in 2008 when the crash happened. Everybody, 2008, 2009, pretty much everybody in the market cut their marketing, and I doubled it, and that was the big difference. So that then gave me, catapulted us forward. And then it's just about putting the consumer first and all of that. And then going on from there, now I've acquired several businesses actually, but two more in the insurance space. One's called Avanti, which is perhaps a more mature consumer. And I recently acquired a company called Paying Too Much, which is an aggregator. That's just being rebranded as we speak, and it's going to go after Money Supermarket and those, but with a slightly different proposition. And I suppose if you look at where we are now, or where we were, should I say, up until COVID, we were about 160 million of turnover, about 20 million EBITDA, a market cap of about 300 million, several hundred staff. We talk about 1,000, but that's across various things that I'm involved with. So a pretty successful story in the end. But it comes down to staying focused and persevering, because I've had a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, focus and perseverance. I think in a fantastic story, Ryan, I personally take away from that need for focus and the perseverance. And I guess, we're all lucky to be here tonight with the, on this online setup and so on. But you mentioned obviously StaySure's involvement in the travel industry, and as we all know, we're not able to travel at this current time as we would like to, clearly. And as you're in the travel business, how are you coping with the pandemic in your business, given what your business is?
Yeah, well, if we take a step back from that, something that Rachel talked about with regard to risk. Being an entrepreneur, it's very, very easy just to get going and not look at risk. And when we started to hear about this, I think it was probably November, December, or whenever we first started to hear about it. We run a risk register being an insurance company, so you've got lots of risks that you have to mitigate against and so on. But it's something that's very important when I now look at business. So at that point, I made a bit of a speech to a number of people, and I remember I think it was about 25, 30 people that were sitting there, and I talked about risk, and I said, what are you going to do if your income goes down by 25, 50, or even 100%? And they thought I was nuts. You know, they really didn't get it. And these were a load of entrepreneurs sitting there. They thought that, you know, I was talking out my arse, but, you know, I clearly wasn't. So the starting point is that we'd done an awful lot of risk assessment, and we'd, you know, fortunate enough to have a decent balance sheet to be able to get through. And during that period before it went pear-shaped, we made a number of moves to protect our business. So, you know, but by analysing. So that was the starting point. And then the next thing is to think different. You know, so interestingly, I listened to some so-called leaders in travel insurance being interviewed. I think it was by the Insurance Post, 2 or 3 of them, and they said, well, there aren't any sales, and there won't be any until July. And once more, really interestingly, a lot of my competitors pulled off all of their marketing, everything. And to a degree, that's sensible, because unlike 2008, where the market hadn't disappeared, it was just that people were frightened. Here you've got a situation with travel where, well, actually a lot of the market has disappeared. So I took the view that any on-demand marketing, i.e. PPC, search, anything like that, I would just keep it there. And what was really astounding was that if you take our average costs of acquiring customers, they went down during this period, because the competition disappeared, which was like bizarre, right? So that was the, you know, the couple of big things that I did. But then I looked at, you know, from the consumer's perspective, what do they want? So some people could still travel at this point. We didn't know how bad it was going to be. Our insurers had pulled out from any, well, not from insurance totally, but they'd basically made it that COVID, if you got COVID, the no insurance was valid with COVID. Right. So obviously a lot of people were very, very concerned about that. So we started to look and say, well, what could we do? So the 2 things that we did were, we were the first to do this, and you'll find actually everything we did, we were the first to do it. We first of all did a 15 for 12 annual multi-trip. So I thought, well, maybe this is going to last 3 months, but you never know, it could have been an awful lot longer. So anybody looking to renew their policy, we give them 15 for 12 or any new ones coming in. That kept a lot of income. The other thing we did for anybody that wanted to, any renewals in particular, is we allowed them to change the dates at any time, in, you know, up to 2 years in the future, which also kept quite a lot of income. Okay. We were then the first to get COVID cover back into the market. So I spoke with the underwriters, and I said to them, bear in mind we're the largest and we have an awful lot of clout, and we even though we're an intermediary, we actually act like a broker. We're sort of like an insurer. We price the product ourselves, we price the net price, and they trust us to do that. And I suppose there's another story in there as well, as in that, you know, a few years ago when I had a bit of a problem with one underwriter where we had a loss ratio which was unacceptable because they'd priced it incorrectly. I went to this underwriter that I'd worked with before and said, we can do something with you here, but I believe there's only a way of, if we can come up with a win-win, then we'll ultimately win. And I believe so I put something to them there, and ever since that moment, we've had a really great relationship with that supplier, to the point where they've been trying to buy us for I don't know how long. So when it came to this, you know, we're huge in comparison to anybody else that they've really got. So we managed to put a lot of pressure on them with COVID. And one of the things that they said, I said to them, I said, well, what's going to happen if somebody walks into a hospital with insurance and they've got COVID? How are we going to, how are we going to know? How are you going to know? Well, it's going to be a disaster. And they said, well, ultimately, we'll probably cover them anyway. I said, well, if you're going to cover them, then we need to tell people that. So I led that. And then when this whole FCO thing came about, where, the countries were quarantined, very similar. I did pretty much the same thing. And I said to them, look, we're now in a situation where customers can't travel, because you may or may not be aware, with travel insurance, when you're going to an area, if the FCO say that it's not, you shouldn't be traveling to this area, the insurance policy becomes invalid. Now, obviously, having not really experienced this before, I asked the question: is this a legal thing, or is it just that it's your way of mitigating risk? And which you could understand if it's a war area or something like that. Because this type of thing was built for that type of problem. So I managed to convince them that we should be insuring people for everything other than what the FCO dictated that we shouldn't. And once more, we led the market with that. The other things that I did, obviously we used the furlough scheme, but we, even now we've got about 500, 550 staff working right now, selling travel insurance and doing all the things that we need to do. But I took some tough decisions. I didn't let anybody go for COVID, but there were a couple of people that I let go of who I didn't think were good enough. That was one thing. But other than that, I made some salary cuts in different ranges as well. And I explained to the staff that, if we don't know where this is going to end up, and ultimately it's better that, you all take a cut and there's longevity. Now, we had enough money to get through anyway, but you just never know how long it's going to go on for. So that's another thing that I did. So taking a tough decision. So, a combination of all of those things. And, I tie everything down into really neat quarters. And in the second quarter, I basically set the target of breaking even by the end of the quarter. That wasn't breaking even in the quarter because the loss in March was substantial, but we managed to break even by the quarter. And then I set a substantial target for the next quarter, quite a big profit line, and we missed it by about 10%. So I think the thing is, it's about thinking different. It's about doing what others don't do. You've got to take a step back. You've got to think about the consumer and what do they really want. To stick your head in the sand and think that customers aren't buying. Customers are still looking to buy things everywhere. I mean, when you look at restaurants, I saw one restaurant where they were absolutely rammed with orders. Literally people queuing to pick up this stuff, where others had closed down. So I think it's just about mindset.
No, that's fantastic, Ryan. And nobody likes to miss targets, but I guess 10% in this climate could be an awful lot worse. So no, that's fantastic to hear. And you're now using all of that experience that we've heard about to personally mentor and invest in businesses and that are struggling in this crisis, and using that experience that you've gained, not just in this crisis, but from years of experience as an entrepreneur. And so I suppose I've got a couple of questions there. What do you look for when you select a potential investment? And secondly, I believe you have a 90-day system that gives entrepreneurs support. So I guess, can you tell us a little bit about how you would select an appropriate investment and how you would support that investment throughout then?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part of that first. What do I look for? The first thing I look for is, what space do you own? Every business has to own a space, or go after a space that it has a chance of getting. If a business can't own a space, or be unique or do something different in that space, I'd be very, very wary about it. And this is a very simple analogy, but if you take Volvo, you would think safe car, but it's probably no safer than any other. It's just the space they've gone after, and they've owned it very, very well. And we can talk about many companies that have done things like that. So you've got to own a space. You've really got to have a full understanding of the market. Who's in the market? What have they done? What have they been successful with? Look at those success stories and look at the failures, and find out who's doing what and how they're achieving what they're doing. It's so easy nowadays with technology to be able to see it's pretty transparent to see what most companies are doing, especially if they're online. But even if they're offline, there's lots of stuff to track on and offline marketing, for example. But looking at their proposition, how are they getting their market? What size are they? What are profits? What's their ratios? When I'm talking about ratios, I'm talking about staff to profit ratio. All those types of things. So I'd want to know the ins and outs of the business, where you're going, and who's the most successful in there and how they're doing it. So basically, not reinventing the wheel. This sounds like an obvious one, but I've seen many of these across my desk. The juice must be worth the squeeze. In other words, it's got to be worth going after. I was on a video conference, well, not video conference, a video interview with a potential company the other day, and they had a really good business, but when they were going after something that was good, but their pricing meant that they were never going to make any money, and the cost to get there was huge. It just really didn't make any sense. So you've got to ask yourself the question, is it really worth it? And I suppose the other thing that you need to look at is you've got to think with the end in mind if you're looking to sell. Now, I'm not looking to sell business because I just love business and want to keep going. So, I'm looking to build mine up to be a couple of billion or whatever it gets to. But ultimately, I think it's important to think about what the PE ratio is. That's a profit to earnings ratio when you exit that business, if you want to exit it, because some businesses will have a low PE ratio and some will have a high PE ratio. So if you take my business in insurance at the moment, one of the things I'm doing, an insurance broker on the markets was typically 13, 14, 15 times, or maybe a bit more if it was growing very fast like we are. An aggregator could be 20, 25 times, or fintech is off the scale. So I'm now in all of those areas. So it's important to think about what the end in mind. And I'm always looking at the business and thinking what can it really be valued at. I also want to look at the founders, and I want to ask this question with founders, especially if you've got two of them. I want to know what their number is. Because what you find a lot of the time with a couple of founders is one's understanding of what good looks like is this and the other is that, and that can create a conflict down the line. And obviously the founders need to be good enough to operate that business. I mean, you can have a great business with crap people and it will be a failure, and you can have a business that's pretty tough with great people and you'll manage to succeed. I like them to have some skin in the game. I really don't like it when it comes across my desk and I'm the investor and they've put nothing in. And they're looking for a salary en route to success. That really turns me off. And then finally, honesty. I'm gonna look for that bullshit meter. I'm gonna make sure that they are, they're not one of those types.
Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense.
Okay. And then the 90-day thing is I got this from a mentor of mine, a guy you should check out actually, a guy called Keith Cunningham. He's a great guy, older gentleman. If any of you have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which if you haven't, it's perhaps worth a read. He's the guy that the book is based on. So he is actually Rich Dad. He's actually a similar age, but he was the guy that the book was based on. It was his ideas. So a very, very smart guy. And one of the things I got from him was focus, but the second thing was breaking everything into 90-day quarters and going after what is the most important thing that you can do in that quarter. Now I've developed that system which I'll come on to in a moment, but if we take this most important thing, if you can imagine that you as a business owner and every one of your key employees or partners focuses on the most important thing that they can get delivered in 90 days, really focuses on it, the stacking effect of that is incredible. And I started to use this, and it tripled my profit over a couple of years by getting really focused on the things that mattered. And then I looked at a system called OKRs, which you've probably heard of. A guy called John Doerr. If you've not read his book, you should read it. But a guy called John Doerr sort of invented this back in the Intel days, and It's basically taking an objective, main objective, and then having key results to measure that objective by. But I've actually topped and tailed that with a couple of things. So the first thing is, what's the vision? So in your company, in any company, everybody in that company has got to know where this company is going and what's the big vision, and really think big. Now, I do this for every area of my life, not just business. So I'll chop every area of my life up. So from business, health, fitness, learning, whatever it is, every area, and I'll have an amazing vision for it. And then what I'll do is I'll take a year in advance. I'll normally do this in the final quarter of the year, and I'll take the following year, and I'll put out what is the, where we're going in this year, which should be en route, obviously, to this vision. And then every 90 days, I'll pick the most important thing that I can get done, maybe a couple of other things. I'll do exactly the same with the team. But once more, the major thing, and then the key results are things that measure against those objectives, because they've got to be measurable. Then the final thing, and this is something that I do on a Sunday, I take the tasks for the following week, and this is something I got from Tony Robbins, which is quite good. We all end up doing a load of things that don't matter. And, having the objectives helps you do this. But the things that you're going to do every week make a difference. So what I do is I write out all of my tasks on a Sunday. And then from those tasks, I take them and I chunk them into all of the things that I'm doing in that week, which then sort of makes a difference, if you see what I mean, because you're only doing things that make a difference. So the things you're doing, you're not doing things that you shouldn't be doing. And that, that then gives you a real focus. There is a version of this as well. It's not just about doing it with yourself on your own. It's about a team. So you can have team OKRs. So for example, we're aiming to launch a new brand from scratch in a new part of the market by the end of the year. So we've got a very focused team OKR, and people are focused around what they've got to do for that. The issue that I've had with this, I was actually the chairman of Station for many years. So I lived in southern Spain. I started the business in Spain, got up to about 50 people there before I moved it into the UK. And I sort of then took the chairman role and put chief executives in. And the one thing that frustrated me was having visibility of an owner as who's doing what and where. And so what I've done now is I've created some software, or I said we're creating, it'll be out by January, hopefully, which will then allow me as a business owner to roll this across the organization and to have transparency to see who's doing what where. But the key thing with this is it's not just about me seeing what others doing, it's about up and down the line, everybody seeing what everybody's doing, unless obviously it's sensitive information, and then something like that could be excluded. So this is a great bit of software that I've built around how I do business that I'm going to launch. I think it's going to be really well received. In the interim, we're just building a little bit of a group that can sort of work with me and download stuff and just get into it until the software comes. But I can assure you, if you take the most important thing that you're doing or can do, get incredibly focused on it and deliver it, you'll have a massive result.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I'm sure there's a lot of people very appreciative of that, Ryan. So thank you so much for that, and I'm sure we'll come back to lots of questions towards the end. So thank you. That was fascinating. And Caroline, I guess turning to you now. So Caroline, you're founder of Cocoa World. So I guess for all our benefit, I'd love to hear more about the Cocoa World project. Maybe you could just in a couple of minutes tell us what it's all about.
Cocoa World is a social enterprise, and Cocoa. Can you hear me, David? Okay. So Cocoa World.
Yes, we hear you fine now, Caroline. Yeah.
Very good. So Cocoa World is a social enterprise. We are operating in EdTech, and Cocoa stands for Communicate and Connect. Basically, our mission is to promote peer learning, to bring people together to share knowledge. So we wanted to start with young people, and currently our focus is on creating solutions for young people to share knowledge with each other and to promote peer learning. That's what we stand for, and this is what we do. We have 2 products that we're launching by mid-October, and we have only set up the business in June 2019. So it's almost 1 year that we're only in operation, but we managed to raise 650,000 in funding from the Ministry of Education, from the European Commission, and we're working very closely with academic institutions, because not only we need a good product, operating in the sector we're operating in, we need endorsement of key players to give more credibility for a young startup like ours.
That's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And you know, you touched upon that a moment ago a little bit, Caroline, but I'd be really interested to really look at the problem that you wanted to address. And more importantly, everybody can find problems, but how did you identify that? And you know, can you tell us a little bit about that problem and how you identified it? And was there anything in your background that maybe would have made you look at that specifically? For
sure. So initially, when we were designing the first product, we wanted to work on a management system, on a learning management system that promotes peer learning at the same time. So today you have Moodles, you have Canvas, you have a lot of management systems, but they are all more teacher-based and centric solutions. We wanted to create a solution that still takes this into consideration, but has additional features that allows the members of one group to learn from each other as well. So this way you're offering an integrated learning environment. But during COVID, we thought that we have a great opportunity to basically understand what's the online learning experience with youth in Luxembourg. So we ran a survey, and in 5 days, we got more than 1,000 responses from students. Wow. We spoke to parents and we spoke to principals of schools. And this is what we understood. Today, you have a lot of solutions. So when the schools are using online platforms, they are allowing the teachers to run lectures and to give assignments for the students. On the other hand, what the young people are missing the most is actually working with each other. So they did lose the motivation being online and always lectured on what to do and what not to do. And that space where they were working together, maybe in the cafeteria, during recess, in the classroom, they were missing this interaction. So what would they do? They'll go on Snapchat, on WhatsApp, on Skype. They just want to be somewhere where you have no teachers and no parent supervision. But that space was not the most efficient for them to learn, because they will start like a session studying together, and all of a sudden you have something popping up and distracting them. So what we wanted to create is a solution where it's a dedicated space for studying, but that's only for youth, by youth, that is designed only around student needs, but also where you feel you are part of a community of peers without parents' supervision and without teacher supervision. So Peer Square is being launched in 2 weeks' time. And you could look at it as more like it's going to be piloted in 5 schools in Luxembourg. And this is just for 3 months to understand what works, what doesn't work, how can we make it better. And the next phase is hopefully to be able to take it on a global level. We're already in contact with a couple of Chamber of Commerce in Luxembourg and other institutions to see how we can, once we get the endorsement from the Ministry of Education in Luxembourg, it's going to be the first step, because we have the pilot results, we have the endorsement, it will be easier to knock on doors and start reaching other institutions in the area and beyond.
That's fantastic, Caroline. And when you said there a space for youth without teachers or parents, I'm sure my children would be delighted if that moved to Ireland. So that's fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And you know, you mentioned chambers of commerce and so on, but how are the colleges, the schools, both elementary or secondary schools? I mean, how are they embracing this kind of a solution?
For now, actually, the solution was designed with the input of the schools and the universities. So at this stage now with COVID, where everything got accelerated and the need to move to e-learning has accelerated so fast, there were a lot of solutions not yet in place. So today they want to join hands and they want to find solution. And if you'll be able to adapt the solution to their needs, they're more likely to get on board. I think what happened with this confinement and the need for e-learning, where it's no longer a choice but a necessity, has worked in our advantage because we're having more people listening to us. I tell you, during the confinement, I never managed to get that many people as much as I did then, because they actually want to talk to us as much as we want to talk to them. And this is the type of situation where you want to be in when you're starting a business.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine, Caroline, the social impact created has been, as you've just been saying there, the social impact created must have been significant, given June 19, then you had COVID, and so your social impact must have been fairly significant, I guess.
I would say the idea has the intention to, with its growth, to create strong social impact. I mentioned initially we're a social enterprise, but I didn't want to be an NGO because I have a vision and I want to be able to create a model where I can sustain this impact by making money and creating impact. So today we have not piloted yet, but the way things have been designed is definitely to create social impact. So how does this work? One, we're allowing young people to own their learning journey. Second, we're allowing them to contribute, collaborate with each other at the country level, at the region level, at the global level, at the school level. So young people are exchanging with each other and they are learning from each other and they are contributing back to their peers community. And third, by developing all of this, you are empowering young people to basically become lifelong learners, the one, and second, have the confidence and the competence to communicate and share, which ultimately, if you consider every single person of us with their diverse background, with their diverse perspective, have the confidence to share their knowledge and to bring it to the group, this is where you're raising and promoting collective intelligence, where we don't all have to be politically correct, we all be molded within the same way of thinking, where actually I feel confident enough, you feel confident enough, Rachel and everyone here feels, let's say, confident enough to bring a different perspective. This is when the knowledge becomes extremely rich. It's not one way, it's many ways to look at things. So that's how we see the social impacts being rippling up. With the more we grow, the more diversity we have, and the more knowledge and perspective we have shared.
Yeah, no, that's excellent, Caroline. And obviously, where you've started from, a lot of what you've just said are I guess, very human. It's very, it can be scalable, to use a business term, if I can put it that way. So I guess that, your model can be replicated into any number of different environments. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, the way we designed it is to start as a local success story in Luxembourg, but move into a global name or a brand. So the way we designed it is with this in mind, because we believe as well at so many levels, be it financially, be it from an impact perspective, the more we go global, the more the richer we'll be and the more impact we will create. So the way it has been designed from the beginning is for it to be a global success, and only the pilot is local with the potential for growth.
That's excellent. And underlying all of this, Caroline, I guess, just to phrase the question, how can the education system encourage that kind of behavior, that entrepreneurial spark in children and young adults in the kind of ways that we're talking about tonight? So how do you think the education system can coalesce with your ideas, and can we collectively as a society create entrepreneurial spark in our children and young people?
I think when you tell me entrepreneurial, for me, I think of someone who's a problem solver, who's able to break down a problem into smaller pieces and find simple solution for each piece. This is, in my mind, what an entrepreneurial spirit is someone who's a problem solver. You have something thrown at them, they'll break it down, and they will try to find solution for it. So does the school, how can the school help in creating this spark? In my opinion, today, what we're trying to do is we're trying to simulate real life into the schools. And I think what we need to do is to throw these kids out there and let them experience real life, let them be faced with real life problems and try to solve them. I think the more schools are in touch with real life, creating environment for students, not to be in a place where it's square, where it's theoretical, but where it's more collaborative, where they are being asked to solve real problems. This is where we have the opportunity to allow these students to solve real life problems, not theoretical problems that maybe they will never face in life later. Now, the school can do this, but I believe that schools are not only in charge of that. I think that the whole society, each one of us, be it the parents, be it maybe the uncle, the aunt, the brother, the sister, another peer, we should all allow young people to be out there, to take risks, to say what they have to say, to solve problems. I believe we are creating such a space where young people feel too protected to be themselves, too protected to say always the right things. We're not allowing space for failure. We're not allowing a space for young people maybe to take risks. And I think this is our responsibility to all of us, be it through a conversation or be it through maybe something we learned. We should not underestimate what each one of us can bring to the table from their intellectual background or cultural background or spiritual background or social network, something where we can help create a society that allow young people to be more confident, to take risks, to be themselves, and not to feel they are scared of their own shadows. So that's what I would say would be the role, not only of schools, but a whole shift in mindset of schools and everything around these young people.
That's fantastic. What a vision. Wow, brilliant. Thank you, Caroline. And again, I'm sure that there'll be a number of questions on that, but thank you. That's inspirational. So really much appreciated. And just turning to
David.
Pleasure, and turning to Max, who hopefully should come on camera as if by magic in just a second. So Max, tell us a bit about can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi David.
Hey Max. So tell us a bit about your business. That'll be, again, just fired out there. Share what you will with us.
Yeah, sure. So SOPI is, according to some publications from Forbes, is the smartest hand hygiene facility or microstation global wide. If you think about it, can you be 400% sure that you're washing your hands properly? I think it's a question that is repeating around the globe again and again today. So SOPI can answer that. Can answer that question, can guide you through the process, can make sure that you're washing or sanitizing your hands at the highest level. And it's not a question where you are located, what profession you have, just to make sure that you have your hands as clean as possible.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And I mean, it's like everything else, isn't it, Max? I mean, the simplest of propositions are always brilliant. So, where did the inspiration come for this idea?
The idea really came from my son. He was 2.5 years old back then, and we had a very fun conversation when we came back from a playground several years ago. He knocked me on my leg and said, "Well, I don't think that it's important about hands." Myself coming from medical science background, I was very surprised from that. And I replied with, "Sam, why?" We had a very post-apocalyptic conversation between 30 years old grown-up, or who thinks he's a grown-up, and a 2.5 years old kid. And he was trying to explain that there is no water in the faucet because of infrastructure repairs. And if there is no water in the faucet, that means that water is not important. Washing hands is not important. Taking a shower or drinking is not important. So it was very fun. And after drilling down a habit that was just, it kind of disappeared just because of some infrastructure problems, I realized that educational interventions that are here, and everyone is talking about why hand hygiene is so important since 150 years ago, you don't really have any technological tools that can support all of that education that we have today. And we ending up with everyone washing hands according to your gut feeling and according to the times that you have in your day, and not according to real science that is there, is described black on white through a lot of articles and publications in the healthcare and hospital world. So we decided to address that with a technological AI, computer vision, smart system that can support all of that data science.
Brilliant. And then, of course, Max, along came COVID-19 crisis. And, my guess is that given the kind of behaviors that we're all encouraged to use, this became a real catalyst for your solution, yes?
Yes, of course. The conversation about why soap is so important pretty much disappeared. Everyone suddenly understand that hand wash is not just something that we need to train during our childhood time, but it's more than that. I would say that the real effect came from markets that we were not targeting at all. So if you take me back to probably May last year, we were mainly addressing food and bev production or service environments. We were talking about healthcare facilities, even some educational environments. Right now, and it was billions and billions of dollars markets. We were talking about like hundreds of billions of potential markets that we were addressing. If you think about what happened right now, since COVID started, and I'm talking about March, I'm not talking about when we just started to hear about it in December last year, the global GDP lost more than $10 trillion. And it was not in food and bev, healthcare, education environment. It was across everything. So if you think about the opportunities that we suddenly hear today, it's pretty crazy. Since March till end of May, we received inquiries from more than 140 countries, from consumers at household level up to corporates of Fortune 100. Inquiries for thousands of units with main request if we can deliver yesterday, not tomorrow, not today, yesterday. So it brings a lot of opportunities, catalysts, of course, but also a lot of challenges, because right now we need to be able to reply to inquiries that you can maybe dream for, but at the same time, you're afraid to have all of that at once. So yeah, COVID is a crazy opportunity in many ways. Unfortunately, I hope it will disappear as soon as possible, but we will not go back to the normal that we had. Just we'll have a new normal now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess this phrase, the new normal, when we do get back to that point, Max, where do you feel the unique features within your business will support you going forward in terms of the new normal, as it's called?
Well, I think it's a question that maybe I'm not the best person to answer that, because it's going back to our customers today and to everyone. How can you make sure that your business or your environment is safe for your employees or for your customers? How can you make sure that you can manage the new normal properly? And that's exactly where SOAPy gets in. You have at the palm of your hand a feedback, a report on several layers, how your environment is on hygiene levels. If everyone is washing hands properly on time, if everyone is sanitizing on the best level that you can wish for, do you want to present this kind of information to your customers and get good publicity instead of bad publicity of your business? I can refer to a feedback that we received from a new customer that was a customer of our customers. He went to that facility and saw one of our units installed in one of the meeting rooms. And after that meeting, he called us and asked to buy a unit because of the feeling that he had when he saw our technology up there. He said, I suddenly felt safe entering this environment. And for me, this is the best feeling that I can hope for from my customers.
Yeah.
That's simple. Do you want to make sure that your environment is safe? SOAPy can do it. SOAPy can at least minimize some of the risk that is out there. And it's not always COVID. It's the flu, it's norovirus.
Yeah.
And I can send you a list of other infection diseases that were there before and probably will be here after.
So, I mean, the potential for your business, Max, then, you know, in terms of potential customers, you could almost define it as anybody who wants to stay safe, right? So the possibilities are endless for you guys.
Well, I would say that right now, it's not endless, as we do have competitors and we do have limited market in terms of as long as we know how many people are there out there and how many work locations are there, so you can limit the market. But the answer is simple. As long as we have hands and we interact with the surrounding around us with those hands, you will need to make sure that you are clean. Because as my professor back in college was saying, humanity is just a small period of time in the microbiological realm. So that's how it is. Unfortunately, we are here with microbes and viruses. We will interact with them as long as we are here. And we need to make sure that we have the right tools, the smart tools to, to minimize that risk. And SOAPy is to make that basic practice high-tech again. You have self-driving cars. Why can't you wash your hands in the supermarket?
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And every success with that, Max. So our time's nearly up. So I'm going to try to scroll through and see if I can see any questions before we go into the breakout rooms. So just give me 1 second. I did see a question for Caroline, I think, somewhere. Okay, so Alessandro has asked a question here, and it says, so this is to Caroline, how did you adapt your business and people strategy with Cocoa World to adapt to the new normal? How did your priorities and mindsets change? So thanks, Alessandro, for the question. Caroline.
Yes, I'm here. I think we got the funding. We got approved the funding in October, but the money was released in February. And we were just launching and I was on my own initially, and we were starting building the team. And then by March, we had few people on board, and we were planning, as part of my first entrepreneurial experience, I said, I'm going to use this opportunity as well to educate myself in areas where I'm weak. So I decided, I want to work with a technology company that's based in Luxembourg, also in the same building, so they are part of the team without me necessarily hiring them. And then as soon as the COVID started, so my idea was to get all these suppliers basically nearby, so they are part of my team. I educate myself in those areas, but they're not people I'm hiring 100%. So that was my strategy within this first 6 months, to educate myself as a first-time entrepreneur in all these areas and have a close eye on how my project is progressing. So during COVID, I was at home. So there was no reason for me anymore to think in that strategy. So what I was thinking about is like, how can I minimize my costs? And this is how I was working on. So basically, we set up a very remote network of suppliers, and I was looking at the value for my money. So this way, I can say that we got the same result, but we reduced our cost by 4 times, because I was able through COVID to work with people from around the world. So at some point we were like 10 people, and I would say like we come from 8 different countries. So that was the strategy with the people. Now, in terms of priorities and mindset change, as I said earlier, I wanted to deliver the product as quickly as possible, and I wanted to keep an eye on the funding I received. So it was how to get the most out of this with the least investment, so I can keep the money for the rollout phase and the sales phase. So these were the 2 areas that I was focusing on. And I think COVID was a good thing for us.
Yeah, well, it's, it is what it is. And it's been an amazing panel, I have to say. I think we've just got time maybe for one more question. Steve, Caroline, again for you, some fantastic feedback in the chat, by the way, some really positive comments for all our speakers this evening. So just very quickly, Caroline, we have a question, I think, from Steve, and it says, where are you based in the Luxembourg ecosystem, and how did it assist you?
I'm based at Luxembourg City Incubator. So it's part of the House of Startups in Luxembourg. And Luxembourg has been amazing in a sense where it's a very agile governance structure, and there is money. It's agile, it's diverse, and there is equity-free funding. So far, when I said we raised 650,000, one was from a competition through the Ministry of Economy, and one was from the European Social Fund, and one was from the Ministry of Education. So, and all of these are equity-free funding. So thank you, Luxembourg. I think I landed accidentally in Luxembourg, but I feel I'm the luckiest person on earth to be here, especially at times where a lot of governments are struggling with funding. Luxembourg has been so quick and to mobilize funding to help startups, entrepreneurs, businesses early on in the process. So I'm so lucky to be here.
No, that's excellent, and I know, yeah, that's a brilliant story, and thanks for sharing, Caroline. So we're absolutely out of time, I'm afraid, folks. But if I could just say on behalf of myself and Continent 8, a big thank you again to all the speakers this evening. And as I said a moment ago, it's inspiring to see these kind of things go from idea to action, and it's a great thrill for us to sponsor this evening. So thank you all once again. Thank you to the different Startup Grind chapters. And I think I'm handing you over now to Steve. Is that right, Steve?
Oh, that's fine. That's right. Okay, in the name of all of us, all my fellow startup chapter directors, a big thank you to all the panelists. Unfortunately, we cannot clap. You would not hear us. And also from the various Startup Grind chapters, we would like to thank Dennis, especially Dennis Matthews, for pulling this together. And also to having you, David, and also the local partners. Each of us has our local partners. Exactly. Let's clap. Each of us has our local partners to support it. And now we are going to do some virtual networking. And Tal will put us into groups. And there will be 2 groups. One will be about will be about funding and mentoring, and one on lived experience. We are trying, as Tal said, it's SG virtual. Startup Grind is about doing connections, exchanging, learning, and inspiring each other. And we are trying to put this into the virtual space as well. So, Dennis, if you like to say the last words.
Sure. Just quickly say thank you so much to all of our panelists. You have shared the most amazing journeys, extremely inspirational. I actually have to especially thank Ryan, who jumped in a little bit last minute, and he's joined us from Portugal, where he's staying at the moment. Ryan and Caroline, his assistant, have been amazing. So thank you.
So, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to the main room. We hope you enjoyed it. And I think, Dennis, if you come back, then you have the honor to close it. Denise.
Okay. Cool. I think that it's been a great session. Truly some inspirational journeys shared here, and obviously some incredible advice. Thank you to everybody who's participated, to my colleagues all over the world that joined forces with me when I asked them to. You have been amazing. Again, thanks, David, for moderating the session. And well, let's do more of these.